Today is Monday, new format, new me. Banlist is finally here and we're great and happy to try something new. So I'm going to be looking at the best meta decks for the upcoming format, and of course I'm going to put this in no particular order because I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot and make some wrong claims. So let's kind of take it all from there and break it down. So I don't really know exactly which decks are going to be performing better than others. I will give my thoughts here and there, but for the most part I think it's going to be pretty general and quite open. Except for the first deck that I'm going to be talking about. With the ban list hitting decks across the meta, but more specifically Goki in a most drastic fashion, it'll be interesting to see how this one turns up. This deck got hit pretty hard in the ban list, I would say. Goblin was extremely good for some of the combos, and on top of that, not only did it facilitate a lot of combos, it also stopped your opponent from playing literally 90% of the card pool against your board. Can be targeted by, can be destroyed by, can't be attacked over. You know, it's fine if you make your big crazy Yuling board, but the fact that I can't do anything to it, that's what makes that deck really crazy. So Konami set out to address that a little bit and stop some of the crazy combos it was doing with, for example, the Invoker hit, and of course the Goblin hit, which, let's be real, what's my thoughts on that? It really just wasn't enough. It's kind of an ongoing meme now where my reaction videos to the ban list are just straight up incorrect and wrong. I thought that this deck was severely crippled by the ban list to the point of not being garbage and unplayable. I think initially I thought it would still get some tops, but actually after looking at some of the combos and after really looking at some of the videos and stuff that people have posted out there, shoutouts to Yu-Gi-Oh! Chib of course, it's actually crazy just what this deck can still do to this day after the ban list. This deck is one of the biggest stains on competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And is just really unhealthy for the game, so I'm very, very upset to admit that it is still going to be very, very strong. But one thing that I would like to mention and point out, however, is for the first time for as long as I can remember, Europe and America now have vastly different power levels and scalings of some of their decks there. Summon Sorceress alone is what creates this big division between EU and US, and it's going to be really, really weird to see just how differently these decks are going to play at certain events and how these players are going to adapt to it. Because some of the combos that you can do in Europe with Goki are just have to be vastly different from some of the ones you can do in the US, which, for example, there is a 1 card extra link in US because of Summon Sorceress. Now, albeit Goki is obviously a lot more fragile now, but the very fact that Summon Sorceress can facilitate one single Armageddon Night to create a Yuling board still after the ban list that was supposed to address this is mind-boggling. Who would win? A team of analysts and specialists designed to balance and make the game much better and healthier for everyone to enjoy? Or one Sandy boy? A lot of things that you can still do now with, for example, Gold Sark for Balancer Lord as an extender, Hero Kids, Junk Forward, Armageddon Night with Destrudo. Super X plus Goki's still pretty insane. The power level of the deck has obviously gone down a little bit, but the consistency is what's really kind of going to be worrying me here, and why I think maybe the deck won't be that good in Europe at least, but in America, I don't know, man. I think it's probably the best deck over there. Like, Summon Sorcerers is absolutely crazy. I think in Europe, it's obviously far more inconsistent and way more vulnerable to hand traps. But man, it's going to be wild to see just how exactly this format turns out and just what these standings are going to be like for the top 32 after the 200th YCS this weekend. I just think it's going to be so different. Which brings me on to some of the next decks that we're going to be talking about. And there's a couple of options here, so I'll just take them kind of in order. But I'd like to talk about something that was on my mind, and that's like Altergeist, but not specifically how good is that going to be and stuff like that. I think decks like Altergeist, Draco, stunny sort of anti-meta decks, these are all very kind of dependent, obviously, on the meta itself. Now, I think in the US, I think these decks are going to be doing a lot better than EU potentially because, well, if the best deck is the best deck over there, then more people will be playing to counter it, and they might get the matches in their favor and rise up and do much better. Whereas in Europe, if not a lot of people are going to be playing Goki and decided to abandon ship and maybe flow towards something more like Sky Striker or TRICKSTAR itself, you might find like decks like Altergeist and Draco probably aren't going to be doing that well because their success is reliant upon the best deck being the most represented, being the most dominant, and being out there for them to be able to take down with their specific anti-meta cards. So if you're playing something like Altergeist and your opponents aren't running the deck that you built your deck to beat, then you might find yourself struggling depending on what the matchup is, especially if people have decided to main back row hate in Europe, where Trickstar, Sky Striker, etc. are all going to be more popular decks compared to America, where you may be going way more heavier on your hand traps to try and stop some of the crazy Goki combos that are over there with Summon Sorceress. Well, that could lend credence to the fact that Altergeist will be doing better in one region, but less so in another. So I think it's a very, very interesting kind of duality we have between the different regions and how the deck's performances are going to be vastly impacted just because of one single card. And this kind of falls into my category for the third deck here, and that's Draco. Very much kind of in the same line of thought as Altergeist, where yes, this deck is obviously very good at taking down other decks in the meta if people aren't kind of like expecting it or maining it. But if people do maybe consider running things like Cyclone, Twin Twister, or Storm Duster in the main deck to try and combat, for example, the Sky Striker deck, which could be you know, classed as maybe the second best deck or something, then Draco's success could be incumbent upon that. And the performance of Draco and Altergeist hinging on these things, well, I think that's probably what it's going to be boiling down to, is just how good are the top decks going to be, or is it going to be a very vastly open meta? So next deck is Sky Striker, and this is something that I personally enjoyed the most when it first came out. I thought the mirror matches were extremely fun and interactive, and I don't think it does anything super unfair except the bonus cards. Bonus cards, just drawn bonus cards. That's what really makes that deck particularly amazing, is the advantage it generates and the ability to create a lot of stopping power but not really apply a ton of pressure. But of course, BORRELSWORD has vastly changed that. But the issue is well, we've lost the drones, so pure versions of Sky Striker will be breaking a little bit more often, but not too much to the point where I think the deck will be relegated to, you know, irrelevant. Sky Striker is a deck that's extremely toolboxy, and it is able to deal with various kinds of meta decks. And I think that's really what the deck has going for it, is the fact that it is so versatile. And I think that out of all the decks that are in this top 5, it's probably the one that can handle most of the decks better than the other ones. What I mean by that, for example, is Altergeist is obviously going to be a lot stronger against, for example, Goki, because that's what you're generally going to be making your deck to be beating, is that sort of top tier contender deck. But at the same time, you're going to potentially have weaker matchups against Sky Striker, because cards like your Floodgates, like all your traps, like your Faker Interrupts, all of these different disruptions that you're playing are going to be a lot weaker against that deck, since Altergeist do struggle to apply that pressure, which Sky Striker seems to have kind of fixed now with the ability to go into BORRELSWORD. But the Hornet Drones consistency thing and some of the power plays that you could do with extra, not with extra linking, sorry, with linking upward. Well, I think you could extra link in Sky Striker actually. But the link climbing that you could do with triple drones and triple anchor, stealing 2 of your opponent's monsters, making a token, and then going up from there, those were things you could do. Maybe not so much a thing as much anymore, but I think Widow Anchor at 3 is extremely good for the deck. And this is the most important thing, is like, if you do get extra linked by Goki, the most important thing now is that you can target your opponent's monsters. You could be seeing some combos now, for example, where you Widow Anchor the one that protects from destruction, breaking the link thing, and then you start afterburning the rest of their board. So there are ways for Sky Striker to pick apart Goki if it doesn't simply stop it there with one single hand trap, which probably could be enough in Europe, perhaps. And the final deck to talk about is going to be TRICKSTAR. I don't really know how to categorize this, because TRICKSTAR, Sky Striker, I think for the most part you could probably categorize them in the same sort of deck, that, like, I think they're pretty much the same deck, sort of. Now, the TRICKSTAR Sky Striker variant with the singular drones, I think, probably has, for the most part, maybe died off a little bit. It is probably still going to be run and could top, but I don't think it's going to be the best way to play it. I think it's probably maybe better to play it now as pure, or at the very most, just having more ways to disrupt Goki if you're in America, but also maybe some cards to deal with the mirror match a little bit better, like maybe some back row hate, something like that, for TRICKSTAR in Europe, dealing with Sky Striker and the mirror, and just back row decks in general. I think back row decks is really the theme to take away here, is that those are the ones that are probably going to be a little bit more dominant and powerful in Europe, because of the fact that I think Goki just is way too fragile in Europe potentially. But like I said, we'll have to see how it goes. But just based on some of the combos and stuff I've seen, I think that deck is still really strong, and I think people should be trying to deck build in order to beat that goal key strategy, especially if you're in America. I guess that's pretty much my top 5. Some notable shoutouts. Burning Abyss. Of course, Burning Abyss. Why wouldn't you have Burning Abyss? Burning Abyss is probably the best deck, and it's the best deck is too late, you click. Burning Abyss, of course, is a deck, well, that just seems to crop up every format all the time for no reason, undeservedly. Going to say right up now, there will absolutely be at least one Burning Abyss top in Europe at the coming 200th this weekend, and it's going to be by an Italian player. I'm just saying that right now, that will happen. It's just a tradition at this stage. Invoked got Super Poly, which is really cool, so Super Polying your Extra Link might be a thing, who knows. Invoked is a deck that can run a lot of stunny cards in the shape of hand traps and can apply a decent amount of pressure with the Mech Knights and stuff. And it could be a very, very good deck to play in Europe. Not something I would consider for America, but in the EU at least, I think that Invoked Mech Knight is potentially a decent deck to play over here, especially because Shifty Boy is fucked. That card should have been hit. Well, that's going to be my breakdown of the 200th meta for this weekend. Let me know in the comment section down below if you think I'm wrong or any sort of addendums you'd like to make to this. And until next time, my name has been Joshua Schmidt.